All right, so welcome back to part 2 of our April extravaganza of sports tech. And I think this is going to be pretty much like all cycling this entire episode. So if you missed the last episode...
we could if we get to the end.
Oh.
We could get proper dumpster fire.
We could. Okay. So that's going to be a bonus if we can actually get to it. We'll see.
Who loves dumpster fire?
Yeah. There's, the 2 episodes ago, that was like proper.
See?
Okay, so we may get to that. We'll see. We do have a whole bunch of new actual cycling hardware to talk about. So anyways, quick recap though. If you missed the last episode, we talked about the new Garmin Vivo Active 6 smartwatch, as well as the Zwift Community Live event, and a whole bunch of like new hardware, as well as some software changes that came with Zwift, as well as we talked about the Elite Square in episode 2. So anyways, if you missed that episode, go back and watch/listen to that one. Oh, actually, you know what? That's a good point. In terms of watching or listening. So if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we actually are publishing this on YouTube as well. So with YouTube, we have a video version here, but you can also switch back and forth between the video and the podcast version on there too. So
plus you could see Des on the square. I have like exactly 6 seconds of footage of that. And so we will use that 6 seconds and slow it way down. So it feels like it's 18, 20, 40 seconds long. That's all I've got.
Yeah.
But by all the time you spent on that, I have literally just 6 seconds of footage.
Yeah. So anyways, you have plenty of different options to view or listen to this podcast. We'll probably eventually figure out how to actually put up the video version on Spotify. But I think for right now, I think your best experience really is going to be on YouTube. And it's again, like, just like any other podcast, it's great to like put on the background or, like watch on your trainer or whatever. Yeah. So anyways, going back to the cycling products that we have to talk about on this episode. So there are a trio of new Wahoo products, and then Garmin also came out with their new Varia Vue headlight camera combo. This is a 4K camera as well as a headlight for the front of your bike. And this basically is the complement for their RTL 715 radar taillight that they came out with. How long ago was that? Like over a year and a half ago?
At least 2 years.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Been a while.
Yeah, I basically kind of equate it to like a car dash cam for your bike.
Yeah, I think so is Garmin, because they literally just took the parts from it.
Oh, that's true.
Called it done. Obviously Garmin's making bike radars and bike lights for a long time now, in fact. And then when they added the front camera, it's kind of following in the footsteps of what Cyclic did on the back camera, on the radar side there initially, and then now on the front camera side too, also following in Cyclic's footsteps. In fact, I actually got that. Oh, it's too far to reach, darn it. The Fly 12 over there and the Fly 6, that was the rear-based one. But in Garmin's case, the idea is they've taken this front headlight, a 600 lumen headlight, and smashed it together with a 4K-ish a camera, and then allowed you to go ahead and be a safety cam. So it'll record what's going on in front of you automatically. So the moment you turn on your bike computer, it actually will go ahead and turn on your camera for you, and then it will start recording once you start that ride as well. And it'll stop it when you're done with your ride. It'll stop everything and turn it off. And so it's very much like what the radars are, or the bike lights are. It acts both as a bike light as part of the AMP Plus bike light network, as well as the camera controls bit if you have one of the later edge devices. But even if you don't have one of the later edge devices, it doesn't really matter too much, because it just records automatically.
It's just really the controls, really, more than anything else, right?
Which honestly you don't really need too much, other than just unless like you want to snap a clip of something right down there, but you can do that with the app afterwards.
Well, okay, so we'll get that. Yeah, so that's what we're going to get into here in a bit, is the usability of this thing, and in terms of like how you store and save and lock and unlock footage. It's kind of a mess in terms of the terminology. So let's talk about the light portion first, because I think that's the easiest part of it. So the light, it's a 600 lumen light. It was plenty bright in all the situations that we had it in, but it's basically added safety, but not just added safety. I think that there are definitely brighter lights than 600 lumens out there, but in terms of like all our use cases that we used it on, it was plenty bright to actually see.
We went off-road to pitch black conditions.
Pitch black.
With nothing out there. And there's different settings, low, medium, high. 600 is the high setting, both steady and flash options.
I think
550
steady, yeah.
Yeah, and 600 flash. I mean, no meaningful difference.
No, exactly.
But yeah, we went off on a road, like a dirt road that was pitch black. And then, did you follow me down the trail or not? Or you were smart. You turned around.
Well, I heard the screaming, and then I stopped right there.
I thought the trail was going to be wider than it was. I've never taken it in the daytime, and so I was like, this looks like it's a little trail that'll be fun to go on. Oh my God, there's so many very sticky, sticklerish bushes in there, and I was trying to roll this commuter e-bike through there. We did this just for fun at night, thinking we'd just get the footage that we needed to in the dark on this pitch black area. It would have been acceptable on a mountain bike. It was not super ideal for the commuter bike that I rolled down this mountain bike trail. But the light was fine. I got through this just fine.
I think, for some situations, like, let's say, like doing those like ultra endurance mountain bike rides or gravel, you're going to want, a stronger system. But this, I think, is really going to be great for you have to ride home from work or something like that at 7 p.m. Totally fine for that hour, long bike ride.
Easel. Yeah. Anything on the road is fine. Like, you're not, I find like the brighter mountain bike lights at night are great just to give you a much further throw ahead of where you're going, to be able to go ahead and start calculating what you're going to do.
Probably broader beam too.
Exactly. Yeah. But in any case, light side of it,
great,
is all good. No problems there. So let's talk about the camera.
Yeah. So he alluded to the 4K-ish before. So basically, it's a 4K sensor. However, is it? Well, I guess, whatever. Okay, so I guess the maximum output of this sensor. Yeah, I'm talking facts.
The facts, the alternative facts.
The maximum recording resolution is 4K. However, that is if you do not use electronic image stabilization, but image stabilization is required. Like, you cannot use this camera without that. The footage would just be unused.
And we should be putting stabilization in very strong air quotes here.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I thought it was still pretty darn good, even on the gravel stuff for the most part. I mean, on some of the shakier gravel, it was a little bit rough, but I think it smoothed it out. I mean, let's put it this way. There was certainly a difference between non-stabilized and stabilized footage, for sure.
And this is actually an interesting point, though, because obviously Garmin, and rightfully so, I'm not going to give them too much hard time on this, is trying to balance battery with the stability, quality, all that other footage, right? So if you look at something like a GoPro Hero 13 Black, right, they are going to skew heavily towards higher resolution, higher quality, perfect image stabilization. Like, you want that to be, what you'd imagine an amazing Red Bull thing to be, right? On the flip side, you've got Garmin, who is trying to have a battery that lasts 6, 8, up to 9 hours, depending on what modes you're in, all this kind of stuff, versus GoPro is like, we'll burn through that battery in just over an hour at 5.3K, 10-bit, etc. However, GoPro does have the little Hero 4K, and they've made a very interesting trade-off there, similar to what Insta360 had done in the past as well, where all the stabilization is not done on camera. So they save a ton of battery as well as overheating concerns, and they offload that stabilization to the app. So if you have the small GoPro Hero 4K and you take that footage straight off the SD card, it is just as bad as Garmin's unstabilized footage. The difference is GoPro is writing all of the accelerometer data into that file so that when you offload it to the app, it can basically go, oh, okay, I know what the camera is doing. I will restabilize that footage, leveraging the accelerometer data that's in that, and make it look almost as buttery smooth as their high-end cameras, without that camera taking the battery hit for it. And I wonder why Garmin doesn't do that here, right? This is not a new concept. Insta360 has been doing this for like half a decade or more at least. And it seems like that would solve two of Garmin's problems. One, it would allow them to go ahead and produce semi-stable footage off camera, and two, it would save them more battery life, because doing that stabilization on camera absolutely impacts battery life, and heat and all these other things.
You bring up a good point there, because the Varia Vue, it's very much being marketed as a safety camera and not an action camera. So you bring that up, though, that's interesting, just because the Hero 4K, that's definitely an action camera, where the Varia Vue, that's a safety camera. And as a safety camera, you're probably going to be utilizing the app way more than you would than the Hero 4K, where Hero 4K, I could see a lot of people wanting to use that camera and actually pull footage straight off of the card versus having to use the app and like export and stuff like that. Because with the Hero 4K, if it's truly an action camera, you may want to use your video editing software on your, on your laptop to actually edit footage and stuff like that. And if you were to pull the footage straight off the card, then you have unstabilized footage. So it's almost like backwards in a sense, in terms of like the target audience. But you're right though, in terms of like why Garmin didn't just offload that to the app.
And the reason we care about stabilized footage is to make the footage usable to view as a human. And it doesn't necessarily make things more clear, right? Because you're still moving that frame around, but it does make that footage easier for people to understand. And if we look at something like what Cyclic's done, the main competitor in the space, they have really leaned in quite heavily. And I wouldn't agree with this marketing strategy, but they've leaned in very heavily into kind of basically posting videos and snippets and the marketing around looking at driver behavior and saying, every driver's out to kill you. Like the most recent marketing email I got, we'll put a screenshot right here. It's basically that same driver shaming out there, which is one strategy, but I don't think that's necessarily the best strategy. Nonetheless, in order to get people to watch all those driver shaming videos, you have to have that footage be stable.
Sure.
Otherwise, people won't watch that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So anyways, I just wonder why Garmin doesn't leverage that. But then I go back to most of the roots of this product outside the bike light side of it really come from their dash cam side, right? So we look at the Vault that we'll talk about in just a second, as well as the image quality bits virtually match their dash cam pieces. It's like in true Garmin style, right? Garmin reuses, we talked about this before, reuses products and components across the marine and aviation and, vehicle side and cycling side. That's how they get their economies of scale, efficiencies of scale here. And this seems to be a case of they took the camera portion for a vehicle on 4 giant wheels and stuck it into a bike.
Yeah. So in terms of using it as an action camera, I think that's going to be a real stretch. So I would not recommend it as an action camera of robots.
No, not at all. The footage is not.
No. And I think the other thing too is that, so it has a built-in microphone as well for recording audio, where most action cameras, the microphones on those are getting good enough now where you can actually like ride and narrate, and you could actually make out your voice, where this not so much.
Most action cameras have a 3 microphone array, some of them 2 microphone arrays. So basically it cancels out the wind noise automatically. This is enough that you could definitely understand an altercation. Like if a driver is yelling at you and you're yelling back, that'll pick that up more or less fine-ish, but it's not Hollywood quality audio.
No. So so again, like if you're looking for an action camera, I think like you may be able to pull a clip or 2 from it or something like that, or maybe like pull a photo or something for your Strava, but don't count on this as being an action camera.
It's just like a dash cam in the sense that like you're not gonna, if you're pulling stuff from dash cam, it's likely because something entertaining or unfortunately tragic may have happened in front of you. But we've all seen those crazy dash cam clips of like, herd of buffalo running across the thing, right? That's the same thing here. If a herd of buffalo runs across and hits your riding buddy, this is definitely gonna be good enough to be like, oh, look at that.
Well, I guess that brings up a good point, is that there are certainly uses for it in the social sense. Like, for instance, so one of our rides, we went out on this Ray route misadventure. Like, so so if you ever go riding with Ray, there's like a good chance you will get like stuck, like lost in a cornfield, like in the middle of nowhere somewhere.
This was not a cornfield. It was an olive orchard.
It was an olive orchard. So the only way to get out of this cornfield in a like meaningfully fast way was to literally go through this like gauntlet of angry dogs. And literally, like, so Ray and I are kind of like looking at these dogs. They're barking like crazy. They're on these like chains and stuff like that. And so Ray's like, I don't know if we can make it through that. And I'm just like, I'm just going.
And they were stationed, so there's a road down the middle, a dirt road, and they were stationed on either side with chains. And it was a question of, was there enough chain slack to shoot the gap down the middle?
And I was like, I'm going for it.
Des decided to YOLO it. I was like, I'm not so sure, but he's going to do it, so I have to do it at this juncture. And we started like slow rolling to the dogs. And it was like, well, they're not. One of them was really angry up front. The other one was like, this is just a pain in the butt sort of thing, right? And unfortunately, I didn't have the camera running on that one because I couldn't get it mounted correctly to my gravel bike. And we had decided at the last second to go gravel on this, versus you had it pre-mounted. But the footage that you have, which you can include here, shows the dog coming at you from the right.
Oh, completely.
If I had footage, it would have definitely been viral worthy because both dogs came at you and both stopped like less than a foot from your wheel on either side. And it was like, wow, we just shot the gap.
You know those cartoons that, it's like the dog's like, running, and then it's like hits the chain like right there. That was basically.
That was it. And this person that had stationed these dogs there clearly knew that, right? Like that you could thread the needle there. But so yeah, that would have been a good viral moment. And this footage would have been acceptable there.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so in terms of like capturing funny mishaps during your rides and like entertaining mishaps, I think that great, to be honest with you. Yeah, super awesome. But again, like they're not marketing this as an action camera, so that's, in all fairness, that's not,
Which is fine.
Yeah, totally. So next up then, let's talk about like the safety aspects of this. So it has an instant detection feature, just like many other Garmin's devices, where it's essentially looking for like a sudden stop or sudden impact using the built-in accelerometer, and then it'll actually like start recording, or it'll save. I have to use the terminology correct here. It'll save the footage before the instant, during the instant, as well as after the instant, so you can have that for your records in case you need that for, again, like some unfortunate instance, like maybe a crash or an accident or something like that. So there's that portion of it. And then I think that kind of gets us into like how the footage is stored and accessed, and this kind of like Venn diagram of a whole bunch of different.
It is so unbelievably complex.
Yeah, that was, I would say that's easily the most complex of the portion of my script and like the review.
I mean, the kicker is, I don't think Garmin at this point realizes how overly complicated it is, in the sense that I think and it's funny because I had this moment just as I finished shooting the video where I was like, okay, I get this now. This isn't that bad, right? And it's like, I have now fallen into the same camp that Garmin has of going, oh, it's taken me a couple weeks, but now I understand how this craziness is because I've explained it 45 times on camera and writing and all this kind of stuff. It's fine. It's totally fine. It's like, no, it's not fine. It's way more complicated than it should be. And like the icons on the Edge dashboard, there's no labels on them at all. There's no, like, one is basically a YouTube icon and a TV. The other one is a play button. And you're like, which one does which?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
And it's not until you happen to dig through a bunch of other things that you're like, okay, now in this other area it tells me the text for what these are, but they're not intuitive until, again, if you've done this for long enough, then you're like, oh, now I get it. But there's not that intuitive, like when UI design is really, really good, it's like, oh, I know exactly what this does. And that doesn't exist at any point in this whole product.
So I think that, I'm not sure if you went ahead or behind or whatever.
Sorry, I broke it.
No, I'm not exactly sure, just because, again, of how complex this all is. So in terms of like how it records footage, so there's like 3 different modes that you can choose from here. So you can have it just record continuously, you can have it only record instance, or you can just turn the camera off entirely.
Or radar context.
Sure, yeah, that too. Yeah, so there's that. So in terms of like recording continuously, that makes sense in the sense that it'll record everything, and then you will be able to see that in the app, and that's what they called unsaved.
Yeah,
Unsaved or unlocked.
Both, depending on which part of the app you use. So that happens the moment you turn the camera on.
Yeah.
You turn the camera on,
Just starts
starts recording automatically.
Yep.
And it goes into the unsaved. From a file structure standpoint, it's called unsaved.
Yeah.
Right. And that is unlocked, meaning that it can be overwritten any point in time you run out of SD card space.
So unsaved in the SD card, but it is actually labeled as unlocked in the Varia app.
Correct. That's where it gets. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there's that. Now let's talk about saved or locked footage. So saved or locked footage is, number 1, any instant detected footage.
Yeah.
But number 2 is footage that you have manually triggered to save.
Right.
And you can do that from your Edge by computer, or you can actually do that with the button on the side as well on there. So that is basically footage that you are specifically wanting to, I guess you could say, save or mark, that you really want to have that footage. Again, if you have it in continuous recording mode, everything will be recorded.
Yeah.
It just won't be put into that special little bucket. So with the unsaved or unlocked footage, you would basically have to kind of like sift through that footage to go find it. So with this saved or locked footage, that's specific and you know where it is.
And there's a button on the edge that looks like a little YouTube TV icon that you can tap that says to film ride. And that'll film from there on and put that into the saved bucket. Now, it's already saving that footage no matter what, whether or not you press that button, but only if you press that button will put it into the saved bucket, which then has, we guess the final step here.
The final step
is the vault.
The vault.
So unless you mark something as saved, it will not go to the Garmin Vault. Now, what is a Garmin Vault, you ask? The Garmin Vault is for $100 a year. You can upload your footage into the Garmin Cloud. They've had this for many, many years on their driving dash cams. So the exact same platform. So this is not another Garmin subscription service. This is something that's already existed, now being opened up to cyclists. So if you click save in that footage, then when you plug your camera in into USB-C port, yay, at the end of the day, it connects to your Wi-Fi, uploads it to the Garmin Vault, but only that footage you mark as saved. So in a typical scenario, you go out and ride, you don't press anything on your handlebars, and that footage gets recorded, but not saved. That never goes to the Garmin Vault. So you could conceivably ride the entire year, never have an incident that you cared about, and be paying $100 a year and have no footage actually at all in the Garmin Vault.
Totally.
And then if you did find an incident, so again, the buffalo hits your people off in front of you, and you're like, oh, I want to save that 30 seconds. You click save, that goes to the Garmin Vault. You are now paying them $100 a year for 30 seconds of footage.
Yeah. I mean, so the Garmin Vault price, if you are purchasing the Varia Vue itself and you do not have a Garmin dash cam for your car, it's $10 a month or $100 a year. That's quite frankly far too expensive for that kind of service. However, on the flip side, if you do own a Garmin dash cam for your car, that the Vault service is just a service, and it's not device dependent. So you could have 2 Garmin dash cams, you could have 2 Garmin Vues, whatever, and all that can feed into one Vault account. So if you do have a dash cam for your car, I think at that point, I think the price is probably okay. But I mean, yeah, I think that they really should have some sort of just cyclist version of the Vault for $5, maybe even $4 a month, something like that.
I mean, keeping in mind, GoPro subscription service is $49 a year, and that includes all of your footage in full resolution, 5x3K, 10 bits, high fidelity, the whole bit, right? All the bits are uploaded automatically in their full resolution up to their platform forever, right? So we looked, and mine was 5 terabytes, 6 terabytes. It was an insane amount of footage. I'm probably on the high end of that, but for $49 a year, right? Very, very solid. I think Garmin needs to find middle ground, not only on pricing, but on how this product works. In my mind, when I plug this thing in at the end of the day, it should just upload everything automatically. And then after 30 days or 60 days or 90 days or whatever marker they want to set, then it purges off the unsaved footage. Otherwise, I don't feel like I'm getting anything for my money there, because if something interesting happened, if that buffalo hit that rider, or the dogs actually caught you or didn't catch you, whatever, I'm going to have saved that footage to my phone, right? And that's going to probably be synced off to a gazillion other cloud services anyway.
Sure.
What am I actually getting from Garmin in this scenario?
Yeah.
What is the actual benefit to a cyclist there? It seems really thin. Yeah, I just feel like we were talking about this the other night. I get that behind the scenes at Garmin, there is a big dependency there on that, dash cam, etc. group in terms of how they share components and hardware and software. But I feel like the cycling team needs to build a cycling forward product that maybe abandons some of those principles in a way that makes it more appealing to cyclists. And that comes down to the hardware side of it. That comes down to the software offerings, the price, all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, right now, as I finish my whole review, it basically says the Garmin, Varia Vue is a good product, but it is far from being a great product or ones that I would shout to the rooftops about, right? It does its job, but it's not like their base radar is ones that we go, that's an awesome product. Go buy their base radar, right? Minus micro USB, but buy their base radar. This, it's I guess.
Well, I think that leads up to the last point, is the price of this. So I guess, first of all, the price of this actually changed
Yep.
from the time that we were first introduced to it to the time it actually launched. And, well, hashtag tariffs.
Yep.
I mean,
Into the real world.
yeah. So, I mean, it was a preemptive, increase in price. So they didn't have to necessarily increase it later.
We will probably do an entire tariff episode at some point.
Yeah.
Things are getting real, right? Things are going to get real for some of these products, depending on where they're made, obviously. And while there's a 90-day reprieve, 90 days does not mean crap all for companies like Garmin trying to price a product that will be in the market for 2 to 3, 4 years.
Sure.
Right? Like in the case of their rear camera and their various other products, talking like 4 or 5 year refresh cycles. Like you can't play these 90-day whims. It just doesn't work.
Well, so anyways, but
that's that aside.
Yeah, setting that aside though, with the Varia Vue, even at its new price, which is actually only 10% higher than what it was originally introduced to us at least. So from that whole standpoint, it's actually not really that much higher considering the tariffs that are imposed on at least the country.
I mean, Garmin makes all their stuff in Taiwan.
Yeah.
To be fair.
Yeah. So anyways, in terms of the
I should clarify, all of their things that are not aviation are in Taiwan.
Correct.
Right. Aviation stuff is almost largely made in the US.
Yeah. So anyways, with that though, even at the price that it was before this increase, it's still a steep price probably for what it really is at the end of the day.
You're paying the Garmin tax.
You are. I guess it's very much like the Apple tax versus like Garmin tax, where you're paying for like probably the ecosystem integration.
Yeah. And I think that's the most interesting thing. If we compare it to this thing, let's see if I can get it without falling over here. Okay. So only last one on the product. If we look at the 512 Sport, this is $319. Yeah, 319, 329, 319 and 329. And it does not, mind-bogglingly, have Wi-Fi or any other sort of, connectivity to the rest of your bike computer. It does have Bluetooth for configuring via the app, but you cannot download those clips. So if you want to download those clips, you either need to pull the SD card out or plug it in via USB-C cable to your phone if your phone supports that. It, has, generally speaking, lesser battery life than Garmin, and especially at effectively lesser resolutions for those same kind of claims. There's a couple categories where it does slightly better than Garmin, but by and large, lesser battery life. It is lighter though. It's about 40 or so grams lighter. I think 50 grams lighter than Garmin's is. There's a lot of interesting comparisons. I'll be doing a kind of comparison review on that. Ultimately, this is now $230 or $220 cheaper than the Garmin. And I think one, to me, this was way too expensive to begin with, just like Garmin's feels way too expensive to begin with for what it is hardware-wise. In Garmin's case, you are paying for that ecosystem, compatibility, integration, all that stuff. And it just, when you turn your bike computer on, this turns on. Now, the kicker is, Cyclic used to have that. Cyclic used to have ANT Plus Lite support in their devices. And then back like 2 versions ago, they took it out as part of this whole like corporate restructuring thing, management change, and they're like, no one wants that. Everyone wants that. No one wants to deal with it.
I wonder if they removed the feature.
There was a big shakeup in terms inside of Cyclic like 5 years ago, just before pre-COVID-ish roughly, where like old management came in. They had a software company that basically kind of held some of their software development hostage. Like it was a whole big old mess. And so coming out of that, they made some really quirky decisions on stuff that it's too bad. That said, looking at pricing, you're like, okay, I did kind of a comparison. If you remove all these Garmin features, then that $220 price seems okay. Not okay. Seems relatively speaking correct, right? But it's just like, $220 price difference, to be clear, not price of the base. But anyways, let's move on from Garmin and other expensive things and talk about something not expensive, which is a sponsor of today's episode, Precision Fuel and Hydration. Is a product both myself as well as my wife use on all of our training and racing events, and even like pseudo racing events, like the ball ride that we talked about last episode. So I use Precision Fuel and Hydration products on that to get me to the top of the ball to see the entire island. Same view I can see from an airplane when I leave the island. But
a little cheaper though.
Actually, it's cheaper to fly than it is to go. The race was $80. The flight here is like $30 to go to Barcelona. So it's cheaper to fly. In any case, I use that product to go ahead and complete that event. And of course, plenty of others do as well, from Major League Baseball teams to NFL teams to NBA teams, and of course, the Tour de France teams, both the men's and the women's side. One of the benefits of Precision Fuel and Hydration is that you can do their online race intake planner. So you basically have this race that you want to do, and it'll help you kind of decide what you need to do from a product standpoint to fuel for that race. Or you can also go ahead and talk to real life humans. They're sports scientists. You can do about a 20-minute Zoom call with them, talk about you as an athlete, as well as your race goals, and they'll recommend which products will work best for you to complete that race. The last thing to note, though, is this product is completely non-sucky to eat. It just tastes decent. So you can do those long events without any problems at all. Of course, all their products are Informed Sport certified, vegan, all are 2-1 glucose fructose, and contain no artificial ingredients. If you'd like to try it yourself, you can use the coupon code on the screen right there. Fitfile, I believe it is, correct?
Pitfall 40 or 20, and we just, no, Pitfall 15.
15.
Something like that. Anyways, it's on the screen. It's on the screen.
It's on the screen. Okay. So you can use it on the screen right there to save yourself that discount percentage, 15% off your first order. Thanks again to Precision Fuel and Hydration for sponsoring this episode.
Thank you once again.
So let's dive into the next topipic, which is
Wahoo.
Wahoo.
Yeah. So
all the Wahoo things.
Wahoo with 3 O's. Well, with 3 products at least.
Yes.
So yeah, so Wahoo came out with a trio of new products. So they announced their Roam 3, Bolt 3, as well as a new radar, which has been proving to be quite popular, in terms of the coverage and whatnot. So with the Roam 3 and Bolt 3, I don't know, did you mention this in your reviews? But I guess first of all, they actually called them the 3s. And,
3s, yeah.
Yeah, and they didn't try to sneakily call them the V2s, but not call them the V2s. They actually called them 3s, and you know what? I really appreciate that.
I appreciate that. I would not have minded by the way, V3 or
No, totally.
that'd be totally cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's funny because both of us had some run-ins with past, no longer there, I don't believe, Wahoo PR peoples. And
that's true.
That were upset with us when we called, and upset with Shane Miller, GP Llama as well.
Yeah.
When we called their products the Bolt V2 and the Roam V2, etc. We got Nastagram emails about that. Because they're like, it's not V2, it's just the new Bolt or the Bolt. It's like, no, that's not how the world works. You don't get to do that. So
but at the same time too, though, that's what we all did for the Karoo 3. Because
and we're still doing it.
They were, and here's the thing, Karoo was even very much preemptive. They were very preemptive about
preemptive.
In putting in the marketing materials for media. That's this is called the new Karoo, right? They didn't mention the Karoo 3, but they said this is the new Karoo, and all of us went straight out of the gate with Karoo 3.
Karoo 3. That's what it is. It's just, we've talked about this in the past. All you do is dilute your Google search for your products when you try to reuse the same thing. Mm-hmm. We've seen other companies like Apple shift away from that strategy for their products as well, because it just doesn't help consumers. It doesn't help anything. So good job, Wahoo, on just calling it the 3. Though I did say V3 numerous times. I had to correct it.
It's fine. I think it's interchangeable. It's
interchangeable. Yeah.
But with the Roam and Bolt 3, so basically these are actually incremental updates really for the Roam and the Bolt series, where they bring in some of the features from the Ace. But basically with the Bolt just has a little bit of an updated user interface, as well as the updated display that displays more colors and just a little bit different form factor on that one. And then the Roam, that's a more meaningful upgrade.
Yep.
Where that one brings in a touchscreen along with the updated display with more colors, but also the micro or the speaker in it as well, which I think for me, the Roam is kind of the sweet spot device in my opinion, especially because they slimmed down the Roam as well, where the original Roam as well as the Roam V2, that one was it was a little bit chunky for my taste. And I know people complain about bezels, and I actually will complain about the bezels on the original Roam, where those were pretty thick. But with the Roam 3, I really like the new form factor about it. And I don't know, I think for me, it's kind of the sweet spot size for me. A sweet spot size as well as features.
Indeed. And so it's got the bike bell, and essentially this is a standardization of their software platform across Ace, Roam, and Bolt, which does mean though that their existing Roam and Bolt users are effectively being left behind. There may be some minor software updates there, but feature-wise, that ship has sailed and now sunk. That's over. But going forward, the idea is that you have this, Ace, Roam, and Bolt's V3 or 3. See, I did it right there. 3 being all one platform, and so every time there is a software update, you get across all of them at once. In the same way that Garmin's done that for their X40 series, right?
Sure.
50 being kind of the same thing there too. Now, on the Bolt, though, I will note it does get dual band multi-frequency GPS, which is something that it didn't have previously. That said, it hasn't really been a big deal to me either way. I don't do a ton of super high speed mountain biking switchbacks where that might have been apparent, but even then it was still pretty good.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I think nice updates all around. It's funny though, like you put the Ace, Roam, and Bolt side by side now together, and it really illustrates how big that Ace is. Like that Ace is just
like a giant just stepping into the room.
It's like a Bible or something.
It is. It eats the little Bolt as a pre-breakfast snack, right? Like it's just nothing next to it.
Well, and I think I noticed the weight actually is nearly double that of the Roam as well. So
Pretty bonkers.
yeah, I don't know. Like again, I just have to go back to that device and just say that it's just they went big but too big on it.
I think they missed. I would say they missed the boat, but they mowed the boat. Someone in the Escape Collective Discord said something like basically it's we asked for flying cars, right, and we got the Ace instead. And I kind of commented back and I said, well, it's got about the same weight as an airplane, and it's still got a pitot tube in it, right? So it's the same thing. Yeah, it's interesting. I think. Well, one, these units are now $50 more than they were in the past. So the Bolt and the Roam are $50 more expensive. Though that pricing was their pre-tariff situation. So it's unclear to me what's going to happen on May 6th, if they're going to adjust those prices, keep them. They haven't made any comments one way or the other. And we had kind of like asked them because we were sitting there that night with them when some of those announcements were made around tariffs, and they didn't seem to be phased one way or the other about it. But it'd be interesting to see what happens there. Those are made in Vietnam, I believe. Or they made in,
I can't remember. Do you have one over there?
I do.
I think you
Right here.
over there. So
made in Taiwan. So yeah, that has tariff. Same as Garmin.
That's gonna be tough.
So we'll see what happens there. Again, future tariff episode. Some really interesting stuff coming out of that. I think that could really change the landscape, and not just cycling, but also probably more frankly on the wearable side.
Yeah.
You think like the Chorus of the world, right? That manufacturer in China versus.
I mean, I'll be curious even like how it even affects like some budget brands like Amazfit and stuff like that too.
Oh, totally. That's you look at 150% tariffs on a Amazfit watch. That brings it base game to Garmin levels. But again, Garmin also potentially could be looking at a whatever it is 46% tariff as well on their watches from Taiwan. So
still the price right now, I think they're competitive.
I think it's competitive. I don't actually have any real issues with the price. No. Considering they hadn't raised the prices since their previous iterations, or for roughly 5 years ago for these devices. And I will give credit to Wahoo on their button-only Bolt. So in the case of the Bolt 3, it doesn't have a touchscreen, as you mentioned. So it's still the buttons in the past. When Garmin introduced the Edge 540 back a few years ago, they essentially took the new 840 UI and tried to give it to both the button only 540 and the touchscreen 840 at the same time. And when it launched, it was a hot mess. Like I literally wanted to take that device and throw it against as many hard walls as possible. It was just impossible to use. There's so many parts of that UI that just weren't worked out yet.
Do you think though that if you didn't use the 840 first and you just were using the 540 where you were used to using that UI just with those buttons, because I think maybe I can speak for both of those, but it's like I was using the 840 primarily and just found out how nice it was with the touchscreen. And then when I went to the 540, I'm like, what is this?
Partially, but there was also just hard dead ends, right? There was I remember like some conversations I had where it was like, I factually cannot get to this menu option because the button does not exist yet, right? So like, and they were like, oh yeah, that's a problem, right? So there was dead ends, and there weren't a lot of those dead ends, but there were factually points where it was like, I cannot get to this menu. I think it was one like when structure workouts where you could not get to the thing because it just wasn't enabled. And now it's better. I've used it a few times here and there over the last 6 months, and I can get to the menus pretty quickly now on the 540. But back to Wahoo though. To their credit, after this weekend's update on the Bolt 3, the beta, it's still technically in beta until I think the 14th, and then in theory we have final production firmware from then on until release. But on the Bolt 3 with this weekend's firmware update, it's really good. I can move to the menu very, very fast. There are some moments where I try to still touch it, where I'm like, I can't do that there, right? But it's clean.
See, that's what's funny is that I've been so used to Wahoo devices not having touchscreens that my mind goes to just using the buttons first before even using the touchscreen. And the thing is with the touchscreen on the Ace as well as the Roam is that it's not like you can use every area of the interface with the touchscreen.
No.
It's actually pretty limited in terms of where you can use it. You can use it to like, you can scroll through menus, you can do some selecting, and then you can scroll through data pages, and then you can use it with maps, of course. But it's not actually utilized everywhere throughout the interface. And that's where my brain goes to more using a Garmin Edge with a touchscreen versus a Wahoo, where I intuitively go to the buttons.
Totally. Yeah, no, I agree. Like on the Ace, there's just very few places the touchscreen is used, and to be fair to those places, it's not super awesome. Like the swipe up and down sort of thing doesn't always swipe up and down. So.
No, it's a little bit finicky here and there now. So I think that it's almost like Coros and Endura, where it's like the touchscreen. It's like, sure, there's a touchscreen, but not really the touchscreen experience I think most people are expecting.
Exactly. No, I think the Bolt's a great little device though. So I'm pretty happy with that, and the Roam's working well for me. I've been riding with both of them, on all the rides recently, and I think you have as well. So I will be looking for two core things when it comes to my review. I've been riding the Ace on every single one of my rides since, well, it came out back in December. So I've been basically riding all my rides with pretty much 4 bike computers: the Coros Dura, the Edge 1050, the Wahoo Ace, and the Hammerhead Crew 3. And the Ace continues to be, even as recently as a few weeks ago, the most problematic child of that 4 in terms of software stability, right? I've had ride crashes, I've had full out sensor drops where I had no longer have any power data, etc. And I feel like it's always been the answer from Wahoo, oh, that'll be fixed in the next firmware version. But like then that's like 6 months now. And so I'll be looking to see if these things are solved. Additionally, really gonna be looking at battery life.
Yep. Number one.
Yeah, the Wahoo's claiming some claims there, and their Ace in my rides, and again, I've been doing it every single ride, is consistently only getting half of their claimed battery life, 2/3 in an absolute best case scenario.
But this is, I mean, for me, and I could probably speak for you, but this has been a historical thing for all Wahoo bike computers for me. Where it's like battery life, I'm just like, it's like nowhere even close to the expected claims. Like, I mean, it's truly like an up to number, and it's like chop that in half, and that's probably where you're going to be at, with most actually scenarios.
Right. Whereas like Coros, they have some crazy battery life claims that they come absolutely nowhere near. But their claims are so crazy that even when they only achieve half of that claim, it's still beyond everyone else, right? And of course, they've got basically like a TI-83 calculator there. So it's like not the same display or functionality level.
Almost literally with the solar panel.
Literally, yeah. So it's one of those like, okay, Coros, your claims are nuts. You're nowhere near those claims. But the real life battery is still bonkers good that it's all right if we ignore those weird claims, right? So those are the two core areas that we focused on for those reviews. And we'll have to see how that goes with that final software once we get it.
Yep. So yeah, so let's move on to the last thing that in terms of the interest level for it, it's surprised me for sure. So then this is their new TRACKR Radar. So this is a rear light radar, very much like the Garmin Varias, where it goes on the back of your bike. It has a flashy rear light or steady state rear light. And then it also has a radar inside where it can detect vehicles that are coming up behind you and alert those on your head unit. So yeah, it's just, I mean, it's a radar.
It's a radar.
It's a radar, but you know what? From my testing so far, it's not even final software or anything like that.
Yeah.
It works. I think it works well. I don't know. I think there's probably one major complaint about it. We'll get to that here in 1 second. But I mean, for what it is and the price, I think it's a solid little product.
So far in my testing, I would say, again, this is not final software, so things could change, but 95% of the time, almost identical, or was identical to Garmin's radar in terms of detection and all that kind of stuff. A slim percentage of the time, I found Garmin would detect slightly faster, and then like 5% or so. And then sometimes another 5%, Garmin would detect things that are wider. And the reason is that Garmin's radar actually has a 55 degree field of view versus Wahoo's has 35 degree field of view. So that roughly matters. When I was on bike paths next to the highway, the Garmin was picking up things on the highway. Now, some might argue that is a false positive. I wouldn't. It's a car that's there. And if the highway wasn't separated a bunch of trees and a median of sorts, that could be a large, 5-lane road that you're riding on. And it's the same sort of thing.
Sure.
So pros and cons to both of those. But otherwise, like, this is close enough that it doesn't.
And it's reliable.
It's reliable.
It's reliable.
Yeah. So yeah, as I said in my non-review video, at this point, short of me finding something really wrong with it over the next 4 or so weeks, this will become like my de facto radar.
Sure. Yeah. So let's talk about probably, I think, the hot topic on this radar, though. So it has Wahoo's own little flavor of quarter turn mount. So, I mean, it works very much in the same fashion as a Garmin quarter turn mount. However, its shape is slightly different. So the tabs on it are just like ever so slightly wider than a Garmin, which basically makes it essentially incompatible with an actual Garmin quarter turn mount. And it was kind of funny because, you know, when we were talking to Wahoo about this, like I asked, and I felt like things got really awkward at that point. I was like, oh, so it's a quarter turn mount. And then I looked at the actual like interface for the seat post. I looked at it, I was just like, so this is still a Wahoo mount then. And yeah, things kind of just got awkward at that point because I don't know if they even knew at that point. That I'm like, yeah, I think this is gonna ruffle some feathers in terms of the accessories that people are already using for their existing radars. And I think we should probably talk about like how these really mount.
Right. So these mount on your seat post. So in the box, in the case of Wahoo and Garmin, there are basically adapters for kind of the core seat post types, which is a round seat post, the most common, a flat seat post, and then arrow seat post. So flat being kind of almost like a D style, where the flat portion is a D, and then arrow being like a V of sorts. Those are the 3 common types. But a lot of bikes that won't fit for all sorts of weird reasons. Like my wife's time trial bike or triathlon bike right there, it doesn't fit on that because the amount of space between the saddle and what is essentially her arrow box down below there is too small to mount that. And on top of that, the seat post has almost like 2 different types. It has like an arrow going to a D, so it just breaks multiple ways there. And there are plenty of other scenarios where it doesn't fit on people's seat posts for any number of reasons. So there is a huge aftermarket realm of third-party mounts for these. And there has been for a decade now since the first Garmin Varia Radar. And with that, every other radar since there, from Magene and Brighton and others out there, a bunch of no-name brands, with the exception of Trek, because Trek use the same mount, right? It just works in the same way that action cam companies use the same GoPro mount because it makes it universal. And while DJI and Insta360 have, their own like little magnetic thingamajigs, they also include in there adapter for GoPro because it just works. Mm-hmm. And here Wahoo decided to take their handlebar mount, stick it on the back of the radar, which is non-compatible with all the third-party mounts out there. And people are rightfully annoyed.
I guess I've always been rightfully annoyed with the specific Wahoo quarter turn mount that has been just slightly different, even on their bike computers. I'm just like, why is this different? Like, oh my gosh. Like, that's one thing where I have to give like Chorus a lot of credit for it, just at least using a standard quarter turn.
Sigma the same way. They use the same quarter turn.
Yeah. And, it's like, and I can't remember if you just mentioned this or not, but like Hammerhead actually includes that adapter in there. But playing devil's advocate really quick though, wouldn't it be a bit awkward though, like for them to switch to a standard quarter turn mount on this and still have their Wahoo style quarter turn mount on their bike computers?
I don't think anyone has said anything because it's different, right? So there's no precedent for them having a rear light of their own.
No, because it's like you're not going to like be putting a bike computer on your seat post and your
versus
radar on your
exactly. Yeah, versus someone might have bought a Wahoo KH mount with the blue little plate or whatever in the past, or one from any number of other companies out there. Mm-hmm. And so in that case, I can see why they're sticking with that for the head unit. Mm-hmm. Somewhat not silly, but as somewhat annoying as that is, because the entire market has basically adapters. Now, the reality is that you can take a Garmin quarter turn mount and put a Wahoo into it, depending on how tight tolerance are, right? So a lot of out front makers will simply do the same mount for both, and then you just rotate it 360. And as long as the tolerances aren't super tight, then it works both ways. I think though, had Wahoo gone out with just using the Garmin mount on the back, no one would have said anything. It would have been fine. And there's no like legal concerns there because this mount's been used by other companies now for 16 years, since 2009, I think Wahoo first came out with this mount design, right? Used by everyone else out there. Garmin's never had a problem with this. The whole idea of a legal challenge is well past us at this point. And also that's just not Garmin's MO. Like, we just don't see Garmin suing companies anymore. That's just not what they do these days. So to me, this is just one of those things that ultimately hurts Wahoo's own consumers, right? So here you imagine someone's going to go out and say, hey, I want to buy the new Wahoo Radar. because I want to get away from my Garmin device, right? It's effective what you're saying. It's like, oh, by the way, you got to go buy that new saddle rail mount again to fit the Wahoo one.
Sure. The one thing I do have to say about the Wahoo radar, and I think this is just certainly mixed opinions on the internet so far, is that, you know, I've seen a lot of comments, and I think you have too, about the fact that some people really don't like the look of this, and I think it looked great. I think it looks really, really sleek. Like in terms of like modern design versus like the RTL 515. Yeah, I think it looks sleek. I actually think it looks really good with the included adapter too. It looks clean. Like the entire thing looks really, really clean. And I actually like the adapter a lot, actually, but just because it's way better than the stock adapter on the stock C post mount for the RTL 515 with that little rubber bandy thing like that. The Wahoo mount, I feel it's just a lot more secure.
I think it's more secure, but does that security actually matter?
Right? Well, I've had my RTL 15 fall off before.
Really?
Yep, absolutely. And I've had actually many other friends who have had the same problem. So they have gone ahead and done zip ties instead of the elastic bandy thingy. Yeah, I've never found that to be dark awesome.
Yeah, runs up and every day.
Yeah.
I've never had it fall off, but I find I like the additional security, but I think the Wahoo design just feels way over-engineered though, with the multiple insets and that buckle thing going around it.
It's a little, it's a bit much.
The buckle thing was unnecessary. Just put just a band go around it, right? There's no reason for the buckle thing. Yeah. Anyways, it is what it is, but I think Wahoo really missed the boat there on that mount design for their own customers.
Sure.
Right? Like this is one of those that you want to get people to switch to your product, and you've effectively added a Wahoo tax on top of that to go and now buy a mount that's compatible with it.
I think what's interesting about this too is that, you know, so there are plenty of other radars out there. There's like the TRECK Radar,
Magine,
who else makes a radar?
Brighton,
right?
Magic Shine, Giant, New Web.
Yeah. So I mean, there are plenty of other radar options out there. So I'm kind of fascinated at why this particular radar is perking so much interest, considering it is just a radar that works with pretty much any other bike computer out there, except for the fact that physically it only works with Wahoo adapters.
Yeah, I think part of it is that a lot of the companies we've mentioned, with the exception of Trek, their radars have had caveats. Like when I tested the Brighton and Magine radars, they've had false negatives, false positives, left, right, down the middle, right? And you know, GP Longmachet Miller seeing the same.
Yeah.
In the case of the Trek, when I started testing it last year, it just was bad detection, like just was really latent and did have some false negatives. False negatives being the worst case scenario here, where it misses a car. False positives can happen in city environments, even on Garmin. But false negatives, you cannot miss a car. Like that's a hard no, hard fail. And did see some of those. I even caught some on my camera too. And so thus far, I have not missed a car. So we'll have to see how things go over the next month or so. It's kind of a longer test. So I think people are looking for not only that, but a brand they can trust, right? In the sense that, like, if something goes wrong with Brighton or Magine, there's a few more steps depending on where you are in the world to get that resolved, versus Wahoo and Garmin, some of these bigger name brands, Trek as well even, has that support presence in most of the Western countries where our readership is, or viewership, or whatever you want to call listenership, is from. So I think that's probably the main appeal there. And again, it's just a brand that you know and trust.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, anyways, look for the in-depth reviews or long-term reviews of the radars that are coming up, I don't know, at some point, maybe like early May, along those lines.
So I think we have time for this dumpster. Do you want to do it, or do you want to push the dumpster next?
Let's push the dumpster, because so I literally have a flight to catch here in a few hours. So, and I got to do some last minute packing and stuff like that. So I really apologize. It's my fault, but we're gonna have to save the dumpster fire.
We have to feed the dumpster fire. We have to put some more fire in it. Put some more.
Here's the thing. The thing is, that fire could get out of control real fast.
It could.
And I think we'll know more about that fire by the time we talk about it too. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, yeah, we have to see how how it progresses. It's like a wildfire.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sorry to be mysterious about it all, but it'll be a good one. So definitely stay tuned.
Okay.
So, anyhow, thanks so much for listening or tuning in to the FitFile podcast. As a reminder, we already talked about that earlier. Bill, Spotify, Apple,
all the things.
Spotify, all the things. So anyhow, thanks again, and we will catch you in the next episode.
Have a good one.
See ya.